project. My name is Kostas Trichas. I'm with the 6G Industry Association, and I've had the pleasure of serving as the project coordinator for the SNS ICE. And we're very excited to be here, all of us today, to present to you the results of our work for the past almost 2.5 years. I'll give the stage to my colleagues from different work packages leading the various tasks to take you through what we're going to be talking today. But for the time being, let me go over some basic instructions for our meeting today to facilitate our meeting. So please be aware that the meeting is being recorded. And I would kindly ask you to keep your mics muted at all times unless you're presenting to facilitate the presentations. You're very welcome to use the chat box to ask any questions, and we will make sure to answer them during the Q&A session at the end. And you will also be able to find both the slides that will be presented today and the video recording of this event on the event webpage on the SNSJU website. Now, today's agenda is quite rich, and we're very happy to have with us a esteemed line of colleagues and presenters. We're happy to have Miguel Gonzalez Sancho, who's the head of unit of E1 in DG Connect. We're also very happy to have Elizabeth Vittori, the executive director of the SNSJU. Thank you very much to both of you. It's a pleasure and an honor that you're here to introduce our event. And then after that, we'll go into the content where my colleagues, we also have Colin Wilcott, the chairman of the SIGGIA, and Rafael De Pepe, the vice chairman of the SIGGIA, who also have key roles in the project. We have Jose Almodovar Chico from TNO, who's the 3GPP SA1 chairman and also leading our standardization activities. We have Pratis Avdiva and Maria Raftopoulou from TNO, leading our EU liaisons and cloud-related activities, and Maria Giuffrida from Trust IT, who's leading our vertical engagement tracker tool. And finally, we have the honor of having Carles Anton Haro from CTTC to conclude the meeting with some key takeaways. So, rich agenda. I'd like to thank all the speakers and move ahead potentially with some key information, because some of you probably know what the SNS ICE project is, but for some of you, maybe you're not that well aware. So SNS ICE is the coordination and support action project from the first phase of the SNS, which undertook the role of the, let's say, ambassador of the SNS projects to the outside world. So the main objective of the project was to present, leverage, and position the SNS activities and achievements in major European and global fora. That included several sub-objectives, for instance, monitoring and analyzing and reporting on what happens in the rest of the world, disseminating the SNSJU work and achievements to the rest of the world, and of course, providing the collaboration environment for dialogues among European, global, and vertical stakeholders. You can see in those figures that we have a very extensive network of partners around the world, and try to keep tabs and information with all of them. The work, what matters, especially for today, is how our work was split into three main pillars you can see on the top right. And that's on international collaboration, EU research environment, and vertical engagement. So these are also the three main sessions that we'll go over today. And just to point out from myself, from my side, before going and more to the content and the welcome messages, I would like to simply give you a first view of what we consider the highlights of the project. As mentioned, the project engaged in various activities in different domains, but we were able to, from our side, organize for the first time a common EU front towards some standardization activities and to present the European view on the prioritization of 6G use cases during an SA1 meeting in 2024. You're going to hear more about this from Jose later on. We have been in charge of, let's say, maintaining, applying, and extending the MOU agreements, especially from the SIGGIA side, with various other associations and stakeholder groups around the world via multiple events, of course, common publications, etc. We have enabled, may I ask everybody to mute, please, if you're not speaking, because there is some background noise. Thank you so much. We have created the vertical engagement tracker, which is a very useful online tool, which you can find through the SNSJU website, tracking all the use cases and trials that are taking place within the SNSJU with the participation of vertical stakeholders. We have created 23 videos of community experts talking about current issues. We have organized more than 45 events all over the world, and another 30 more than 30 workshops and webinars online. So in total, through our activities, publications, and engagement, we have reached more than 41,000 people to inform them about what's happening within the SNSGU and what are the key achievements. We have also performed multiple analysis to serve the SNSJU community. So this is the other direction where we try to analyze what's happening to the rest of the world and inform the SNSJU community. So we had the global RNI landscape analysis through a survey of 7 global regions. We did the same thing in collaboration with 9 major European national initiatives, and also analyzed the trends and roadmaps of 9 key vertical sectors. We have published our findings in 4 white papers and 4 peer-reviewed conference papers, even though that wasn't really in our project mission, but we felt that we had very important information. Besides that, we also published 3 policy briefs with direct recommendations and suggestions to key stakeholders. My colleague Carlos will go over it towards the end of the event. And we've organized more than 5 SNSJU info booths in major events and produced and published 20 podcast episodes on expert subjects. So this is in a nutshell. For a small project of 8-9 partners, I would feel that this is a job well done, but hopefully you will be the judge of that. And by the end of the event, I hope you will agree with me. So thank you very much. With that, I will conclude my introductory talk, and I kindly invite Miguel to take the floor and have an opening statement on the DigiConnect. So Miguel, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me and see me? Okay?
All very good, yes.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for the invitation to open this webinar. I look forward to hear about the results of our work here of the project ICE. From my side, I will give a bit of a quick overview, quite high level, from the policy perspective, from the European Commission perspective on matters around technology and the role of 6G and which is the focus of SNS and of this particular project. In guise of introduction, don't be afraid. I only have 3 slides, so I really want to make it quite high level and short. It's I can start by saying that we're at a bit of a crossroads. When it comes to the position of the world in general, of the position of the EU in general. I don't want to understate it. I mean, it's a quite a critical, period we're living. And then the role of technologies is right in the middle of these changes that we're living. And so therefore the choices that will be made, that Europe will make in terms of, of technology, I mean, the regulatory framework, the investments that will be decided, from public side for the private side, that has pretty, it will have pretty lasting consequences. So, but then I want to focus a bit on the matter of the day, which is 6G work, and with that we can go to the first slide. Yeah. So I think for having a good idea of what are the priorities coming of the next period of this year, coming from the Commission or from the EU in general, well, you can have a look at the Commission work program recently for 2025, and to a document which is called the Competitiveness Compass that some of you would have seen. And then I just want to recall what are the three top, let's say, priorities there, which are competitiveness, decarbonization, and security. And then when it comes to competitiveness, technology in general is as high as ever on the agenda. Also, decarbonization, it's something that permeates all the policies, and including technology policy. And then security, I would say, unfortunately, probably it's very, very high on the agenda, much more than some time ago. So these are things that to be kept in mind for all of the EU work, all of the EU-funded work, all of the EU regulatory proposals. These three top-level priorities. Then focusing more on issues around technology, there is a realization. I touched upon before at the beginning on how important the mastering critical technologies is relevant. It's absolutely essential for the let's say for the long-term prosperity and of Europe. And also there's a realization of that there's a lot of catch up to do in that regard, and not to be left behind. So critical technologies, there's some words mentioned there. Artificial intelligence, of course, cloud, quantum, semiconductors, and of course advanced connectivity, which including 5G, 6G, and all of that in an environment where things are very rapidly changing in technology terms, in market terms, with convergence, cloud, edge computing. The role of artificial intelligence becoming very quickly central. With being very important also to align what is proposed in terms of technology possibilities, the technology offer, with the uptake and the demand and the use of that technology. And the cycles are all getting shorter and shorter. In that picture, everything is converging, everything is going very fast, artificial intelligence in the middle, connectivity, advanced connectivity, let's say high quality connectivity remains like backbone of this digital economy, which is in that process of being transformed and converging, and all of that I said before. But connectivity, of course, is also affected by those changes with convergence, with the cloud, the edge, computing, etc. That's a picture that you know about. We can go to the next slide, which is about what the Commission is in the near to medium term doing, in particular, which is directly affecting matters technology policy, and in particular on connectivity. There is a couple of proposals that are mentioned in the work program of the Commission that I introduced before for 2025. One is the Digital Networks Act, which is relevant, which is about adapting the regulatory framework for electronic communications, for telecommunications, in particular to capture, in view to capture the opportunities that emerge, to be on top of the developments, and to make our regulatory framework fit for this changing landscape that I would describe. This was the subject of a white paper on digital infrastructures of 1 year ago. And in particular, in that regard, it is important, to be, to have a regulation which is fit relevant to capture the potential and the possibilities for of 6G, of course. The other important relevant proposal that we're working on is the EU Cloud and the Cloud and AI Development Act. So the bottom line is to mobilize public and private efforts to support the leadership of Europe in artificial intelligence. But I said it before, everything is increasingly linked, and you need to have good connectivity, you need to have good cloud capacity, you need to have good computing capacity. And on many of those, areas, Europe is unfortunately too much dependent these days. So there is, an ambition there to address the situation. There was very recently there was also not to mention this slide because that's very recent. There was also some strategy adopted. I don't know if somebody could please mute because I see this noise coming back. Thank you. The AI continent, strategy was also recently adopted. So there is this ambition to, as I said, to catch up, to be, to not to be left behind when it comes to these massive major developments in technology, that require sufficient capacities in terms of data, digital infrastructures, connectivity, cloud, computing, and so forth. Another important instrument, of course, next to the proposals, regulatory proposals, and slash policy, the EU and Cloud Act is certainly it has a regulatory component, but also a strong policy, softer policy component. It is the funding, of course. That's the other major instrument, the public funding. Where the future is being prepared, is being discussed. What are going to be the future programs that are going to be supporting these technology, developments from the European side. Today, you are well aware with them of them. Horizon, Digital Euro program, Connecting Your Facility is also quite relevant in this context when it comes to support 5G deployment in particular. So the discussions have started, and okay, for that matter, there will be kind of event very 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 soon. Well, there's a series of events these days about the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, and what we call for short FP10 when it comes to supporting research funding. We don't know exactly how things are going to pan out, but we just know that it is quite important to have things right. So therefore, it is not too early to start discussing about what the future is going to be in terms of regulation and regulatory sound, instrument, but also public funding and in combination with private funding. And as mentioned very briefly in the slide, there's a few top, if you like, overarching challenges to be addressed. Certainly in terms of sovereignty of Europe, in sovereignty in an open, interdependent world, how do we go, and tense world, how do we go about this? We know that in Europe we have some issues about deploying technologies, take up by the market. Very often the solutions come from abroad. We have an issue with fragmentation of markets, of internal market, of lack of investment, and others. I mean, those are things that will have to be addressed. And there's a feeling, I would say, my personal, my perception, there's a feeling that things cannot be done as they have been usually done so far, because the challenges are higher, the developments are accelerating. So when it comes to programming, there will be a lot of discussion and a lot of reassessing the way the programs are organized, the scope they have, and so on, and so forth. And certainly, in any case, whatever happens, I mean, the aspects around connectivity, advanced connectivity, will feature in there, but as part of a complex environment, which is not the same that was 7 years ago. As I said, convergence of technologies, artificial intelligence. I mean, the world has changed. I hope, I suppose we can all agree on that. So with that, that takes me to my last slide, actually, which is zooming in what is the core of the focus of work of SNS and the discussion today, which is 6G. 6G, which again, taking it from a let's say more of a policy perspective, not going so much into the specific aspects. 6G, I would say, it's quite important in terms of what it anticipates in terms of potential for bringing this let's say connectivity of the future, of immersive, massive, ultra reliable and low latency communications, with this sensing capabilities, ubiquity, and AI, artificial intelligence capacity. I mean, I think everybody is aware of that around the table. What matters from a policy perspective, I insist, that's what I said that I would take as a perspective here. It is to turn this potential into something tangible. And I'm saying this because there's been a massive, let's say, support and political endorsement for 5G, and yet this impression that, I mean, we in Europe, in terms of take up, we are not doing as well as other parts of the world are doing. So what is it that can be done better next time round, and in particular with the introduction of 6G? It will be quite important. I mean, if I go back to the triptych that I mentioned before, of course, competitiveness is always there. It is quite important to keep that in mind. I mean, we don't do technology just for the sake of it, right? It has to have an impact on the market, but also these top priorities that I mentioned before: sustainability and security. These are issues that perhaps were not as present. Well, they were certainly not as present in the previous when the previous MFF was discussed and support to technology. Now there must be. So it doesn't need to be. That cannot be just an add-on. There are massive demands in terms of energy and other resources, water and so forth, when it comes to the supporting this digital, new digital economy, which is so demanding in terms of data and energy and so forth. So this is something that will have to be integrated in the work, at all levels, including also with 6G. From the Commission side, certainly, it's very clear the line that 6G is instrumental for EU competitiveness in the global technology landscape, and to achieve the targets of the digital decade. That 6G should and will be important also to achieve these other objectives, which are not just, I would say, the economy, but sustainability and security and so on. It will be quite important to kind of demonstrate and to come up with tangible, convincing arguments that these things can be done in parallel. So competitiveness, sustainability, and security. And when it comes to competitiveness, this issue of the business cases, it will be quite important. To make sure that we do very good technology when it comes to 6G, but that it's applied and implemented, that there's a demand for it. As I said before, cycles have kind of shortened, and things are going faster, and the expectations are also to that delivery comes faster. Otherwise, others will do it. Let's say. I mean, the market is also moving quite fast these days. Whatever happens, 6G for that matter will be, that's the expectation, a game changer. It will require still, though, substantial efforts at all levels, not the least to in terms of research to be done. So quite important to follow through the whole cycle from research down to implementation. I mentioned implementation before. It's quite important, but the research effort must be maintained, and that's the core of the work of SNS JU, which is to support this dedicated vehicle, public-private instrument that we have in to support in Europe, the research on advanced 5G, on 6G, keeping an eye on what happens afterwards in terms of take up. So yeah, with that, I look forward to the webinar today to take stock, of what this project in particular has done in terms of being an ambassador, as it was put in one of the slides, to all this work that Europe, let's say, is doing on 6G. So yeah, that was what I had to do from my side. I thank you very much. As I said, I look forward to the rest of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel, for this very interesting opening message and the perspective of the European Commission. And once again, many thanks for accepting our invitation. And let me now stop sharing so I can give the floor to the Executive Director of the SNSJU, Elizabeth Vittori. It's a pleasure to have you on board, and thank you so much for also accepting our invitation. And I think you're going to be facilitated by our project officer, Odysseas Pirovolakis. And again, many thanks for all the support throughout the year. So, Elizabeth, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation, and congratulations to the completion of the project to SNS ICE and all the contributors. Contrary to Miguel's approach, I actually have a lot of slides, so I will just try to emphasize a few points in each slide and leave the quite detailed kind of data points with you, and of course happy to answer any questions. The first slide, if we could maybe just move to the next one, please. It really just summarizes what the SNSJU is. So I think that in the context of the SNS ICE project, probably we do not need a very detailed introduction of being a public and private partnership between the European Commission as the public member and the 6G Industry Association as the private member, as both yourself, Costa, but also Miguel explained. The core of our activities are really related to implementing Horizon Europe funding for research and innovation activities, grouped into initially 4, currently 3 streams of areas. If we move to the next slide, please. I think Miguel has mentioned the kind of the challenges that Europe is facing in terms of competitiveness and the global digital race. What I wanted to show with this slide, which is based on data from the World Economic Forum, OECD data, and also some McKinsey data, is really the size of the opportunity. It's no wonder that the race is on, given that the projection with regard to economic growth is that the digital economy will double in size by 2030. And I think the key strategic question for Europe is how much we can ensure by leveraging both the public as well as the private investments to capture from this quite significant growth. On the next slide, we wanted to highlight also, this is not our own analysis, this is external analysis, the areas where Europe is considered to be quite strong. So has historically a strength that could be built on, that should be maintained. And one of these kind of really important areas is advanced connectivity, which is also, as Miguel mentioned, one of the critical technologies that has been identified in the Commission communication on critical technologies. If we jump to the next slide, please. Our activities are very much aligned with the strategic priorities of the EU. Competitiveness has been mentioned already, but industrial leadership, sustainability, societal impact, but also increasingly importantly, technological sovereignty and security have key roles, are key values in our program, and are also translated into very concrete actions, such as, for example, our Lighthouse project that started this year on sustainability, or indeed the ongoing projects on network security, for example. On the next slide, what we show is, I think it is quite well known to this community, but is our phased approach. Standardization has been mentioned as a key area already. Our phased approach, in which we are in phase 2 right now, and 2026, 2027 will take us to phase 3. It is really aligned with the global standardization process in 3GPP, where the initial activities have started just about a month ago and will be accelerating as of 2027. We also, maybe on the next slide, we can show we have a kind of a large portfolio in phase 2. We have had 3 calls for proposals. The 4th call has just been announced about a week ago. Currently, we have 79 projects ongoing, and there are also some key programmatic results in the form of white papers that are available on our website that have emerged from the cooperative activities amongst our projects. Next slide, please. We are not only aligned in terms of timeline with regard to the global standardization activities, but we also try to measure the contributions to SDOs by our projects. And in fact, contributions to standardization is one of our KPIs. We are targeting at least 1,000 contributions during this current cycle of SNSJU. Probably the 2 most important standardization bodies with regard to which our projects are mostly active and are contributing to our 3GPP and ETSI, which is not a kind of a surprising outcome. Also, we are measuring patent applications, and we have already quite some patent applications available. In terms of an important milestone still on the previous slide, which I'm sure Colin or other colleagues will be speaking of, but I think that this is something that we are particularly proud of, is that the 6 families of initial 6G use cases have been, which were developed by our flagship initiative together with national and other SNSJU funded initiatives, have been presented already to one of the working groups of the working group on use cases of the 3GPP, and constitute sort of a consolidated European view on what typical use cases might emerge from 6G. Sorry, thank you. Next slide, please. International cooperation and let's say, very dynamic international or global situation that we live in has also been referenced before. International cooperation has been an important objective of the SNSJU program from the outset, and we have projects with the US, with the Republic of Korea, as well as with Japan, which are ongoing. There are also several national initiatives with which we are seeking to establish synergies. And we have also seen at important events such as the Mobile World Congress that also at project level there are cooperations between SNSJU funded and nationally funded projects. We also have an ongoing synergy with Europe's rail for the development of the 5G based FRMS system dedicated to railway communications. The next slide, please. Kostas has mentioned already verticals and the verticals cartography. This is something that is very important for not only for SNSJU. I would say that this is really a key for Europe. As Miguel has mentioned, take-up of 5G is not where we would like it to, and therefore the very early involvement of the demand side, not only consumer side, but also the vertical industries who will be using the new technology, is extremely important. And how and where and which industries are involved in SNSJU projects can be monitored and tracked on our website by the verticals cartography. In this view, what we are showing is really the most common industries, the most common industrial vertical industries involved in our projects, but this might evolve over time, and there are other metrics that can be also followed by using this quite interesting tool. On next slide, please. I have made reference already to our fourth call for proposals, but I would really like to take the opportunity to draw everyone to the SNSJU call, which will be opening on the 22nd of May and closing on the 18th of September with 104 million euros of Horizon Europe funding foreseen for 6G research and innovation activities. Further details can be seen on our website. The next slide, please. And this takes me to my last slide. So I think I managed to be relatively quick with the very dense slides. This is more really about the future and future ideas and how we could actually look at the evolving global and European situation in many areas that have been already outlined by Miguel from a more policy perspective. over the last few years, policy priorities have been indeed shifting, and we have been looking at ideas as to how these could be potentially addressed in a potential continuation of SNSJU, where the gaps might be, and indeed what strategic areas would need continued or even intensified research and innovation activities. One of them is the area of AI and leaning into the strategic objective of Europe becoming an AI continent. Already in our program, we have extensive coverage, I would say, of the use of AI for making 6G networks more efficient, both cost efficient or energy efficient. So the use of AI for networks is already being investigated quite considerably. But so far, there hasn't been a lot of focus on using actually AI, or sorry, on investigating the network requirements to support what Europe might become in the future, the AI continent, and how networks could natively support AI-driven use cases and applications of the future. So this could be one potential area which is directly linked to a new strategic policy initiative and policy objective. And another one relates with here we say ubiquitous coverage, but it is not only ubiquity, it's also resilience. It could also potentially look into use cases for defense. But this area is really the integration and intensification of research and innovation activities for the integration of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks. Convergence and the cloud edge continuum have already been mentioned. It is something that the white paper has of the Commission has also referenced. We would consider this to be an area to be further explored in any potential continuation. And one last important point is really how to best address the demand side, and that there is demand and take up of new technologies from early on. And for that, one idea could be to have large-scale pilots introduced where basically different technology innovators, network operators, together with different industrial sectors could experiment and develop from the use cases also business cases, so that adoption and revenue generation can happen from early on once the technology is being deployed. These are, of course, just some ideas for the future for further discussion. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here and for this very informative slides. And let me also take the opportunity to thank you and all the other staff from the SNSJU offices. Due to the nature of the project, we had to work very closely together, and we definitely enjoyed it and appreciated all the guidance you offered us. With that said, I would suggest we move ahead to our next session, as we're a little bit behind time. So I would kindly ask all my colleagues to do their best to be brief and concise. And let's start with Colin Wilcock, the chairman of the SIG-GIA, and the person leading the activities on international engagement on behalf of the SNS ICE project. So Colin, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kostas. Let's see how quickly I can do this. Obviously, I'm going to have to not go into too much detail. But then, to be fair, this is a subject where we could have our own webinar and still fill the time quite happily. If I could go on to the first slide, this is really just giving a background as to the approach that we have taken in SNS ICE. For me, the important thing to keep in mind is actually the last sentence where it's saying what we're trying to achieve. Why are we interested in this international collaboration of working together with peer entities across the world? And the key thing is trying to have a single global 6G standard. And indeed, much of the work we've been doing is trying to create an environment where we have this discourse in both directions with the international partners. And that's partly to understand what's going on around the world, what the ideas are, what the deliverables from the other research programs are, but equally trying to make sure that the ideas and concepts that are developed in Europe, in this AT-SNSJU project, that these are disseminated across the world and have the maximum chance of actually being integrated into that single standard in the future. So both bi-directional communications with international stakeholders sounds easy on the slide, actually involves an awful lot of work, talking to an awful lot of people, having the agreements in place, and an awful lot of air miles. Let us move on to the next slide, please. So this is talking about what is underpinning this international collaboration. It is not the fact that you simply turn up in Japan or Korea and suddenly then we can collaborate. It requires careful discussions and negotiations with peer entities, so with the public, the private associations representing industry in the various different areas. It requires discussion with the governments to make sure they're understanding, especially if we're talking about joint funding. And this is just really showing the breadth of international MOUs, so memorandums of understanding, that we've created over the lifetime of SNS ICE. So we have gone out, and with all of these regions, we have specific agreements, we have held webinars, we have exchanged ideas, we've had joint events. And this has allowed us not just to share information in both directions. I think it's shown that Europe is open to discuss internationally and takes this one global standard seriously. Beyond, also on the lower part of the slide, beyond the sort of international partners, we also have these international associations which represent various different domains, be that automotive or space or operators. And those are also part of this global dialogue that we've had. We've created understanding and memorandums of understanding with also these international organizations to make sure we have access to the key communities to embed 6G ideas and get 6G requirements going forward. If we move to the next slide, please. This is talking about what have we actually disseminated. So in the previous slide, we've created the environment, the relationship, if you will, a relationship to share information, to have joint events. But what have we actually shared? And SNS ICE isn't just about creating the connections, it's about creating the material that will be shared. So creating the European view to actually share. And I think a lot of this has come through the white papers that have been created. So the ones on 6G, for example, but also we've created specific white papers, for example, with the American colleagues to show a roadmap, a joint roadmap between US and Europe on 6G going forward, which hopefully will provide a framework for future collaboration. Okay, maybe I can go to the next slide, please. So this is going into more detail about what Elizabeth kindly touched on. And this is one of the successes, I think. I won't go into details of the actual results, but the key point is that even just within Europe, we have some fragmentation between the national 6G research programs and the European level one, the SNSJU. And the 6G, the SNS ICE project was able to integrate the ideas coming not just from the 80 SNS projects, but also many of the national projects to create one European view of what the key 6G use cases would be. And then also the SNS ICE project has taken those ideas and presented them at 3GP, saying, this is the European view on what 6G should be. These are the use cases we believe are important. And again, that took a lot of collaboration, of effort to try and bring those ideas together with so many disparate partners. But the results, I think, were excellent. And I think it's generally considered that the input from Europe was the best input from any region. It was the most advanced. It went into specific KPIs where no other region was able to do that. Okay, if I move on. This is just talking about the large number of events that we've been involved in within ICE. Clearly, just creating an MOU is just a piece of paper. That doesn't necessarily create too much. You need to bring life into this collaboration, and that doesn't have to be physical events. It can also be online events, but physical events also have a unique place because they build trust between the peer entities. And so we have been very active in many international events, trying to firstly make sure the world is aware of SNSJU and what it stands for, but equally trying to understand what the world is doing and feed that back to our projects to make sure everyone has a clear view of the international dimension. So the ambassador for SNSJU technical work, if you will. Okay, if we could move on, please. And then really the last point, which I've mentioned, but just to be very specific, there's been an awful lot of work on SNS ICE, which perhaps doesn't get the recognition it should. It's great going to these international events. It's great talking to these international partners, but we need to actually create the material. We need to create the European position. And with 80 projects, even just within the SNSJU, this is far from trivial. And this has been a major task to create that material. And it even goes all the way through to the newsletters and everything that have been created to give the European view, the SNS view. But it goes well beyond that with podcasts and videos and press releases. And that's all been part of this project and a very important part of it at that. So I think that was all I was really intending to show. I hope that sort of hangs together and makes sense. I know I've gone through it very quickly, but I think I ought to leave space for other people to talk as well. Thank you, Kostas. I hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Colin. It did let me point out that we are barely scratching the surface today. It's just to give you an idea, and to anyone who's interested in learning more, you can look into our deliverables for more details. And let me also thank you, Colin, for traveling the world several times within the last couple of years to spread the gospel of the SNSJU. With that said, let me take back the baton to discuss let's say, the other side of our international collaboration. So we've seen this angle. That's where also Colin started focusing on the, let's say, left side of this diagram. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the other side of things. So our international engagement was not just about informing our peers and the rest of the world on what we are doing, but it was also about the challenging task of scouring for information, analyzing, and trying to understand what the rest of the world is working on, transmitting this information back to the SNSJU researchers, and performing gap analysis to make sure that Europe is not left behind on any of the aspects or technologies investigated, that we are in par or even ahead of the competition or what the rest of the world is doing. So it's really about this bi-directional, let's say, communication. So in this part, I'd like to focus on the part where we monitor what happens in the rest of the world, and we try to make sense and analyze that. So there's been, of course, as you know, several global activities around 6G R&D. There are associations and organizations working on this in different structures around the world. And we have made sure to analyze key trends from major regions of the world, connect with the representatives, organize events together, and try to see what our common points of interests are, and of course engage with all these stakeholders. As a result, we came up with several, let's say, very interesting surveys which try to pinpoint on what each of the major regions are looking at. How do we compare to that from within the SNSJU, and how do we all compare to what was eventually adopted by the ITU as the final, let's say, recommendations for development of 6G networks. So, for instance, one of the aspects we looked at are which of the use cases each region is prioritizing. You can see here that the top priorities consist of holographic communications and physical systems, digital twins, manufacturing, etc. So there are the few top 5 which are sort of aggregating interest from all over the world. And then we can see the different social and economic aspects of each region being reflected on the type of use cases that fields should be prioritized for 6G. We did a similar research on the 6G KPIs that are being targeted. Let's say that was before the ITU came up with their recommendations, and we could see here where each region would be focusing on. So we tracked 8 main technical KPIs. We tracked the requirements in terms of performance, and we saw that for the most part there was very good alignment, which was also then reflected on the final recommendations by the ITU for the 6G targets. So that different definitions and approaches can be found, for instance, for energy efficiency. Everybody considers this as a very important aspect. However, we also noted that there's no standardized definition or approach or target as to how each region defines that. And we see that network improvements in terms of KPIs usually come with the cost of complexity or additional spectrum, etc. Could I ask, please, somebody mutes because there's some noise in the line? Thank you. Then we did the same thing regarding the enabling technology. So which are the technologies that each region considers as key for the development of 6G networks? So we saw multiple technologies being targeted. Most of the regions had 10 or more of these enablers. And we see that then that means that the expectation is that multiple technological advancements will be required to deliver the vision of 6G networks. Some of the top enablers are of no surprise to anyone. So AI-related enablers, cloud-native networks and RAN core convergence, millimeter wave and terahertz radio, and communication and sensing co-design are some of the top technologies being investigated around the world. And once again, we saw that the SNSJU is very well aligned with the global vision, and we're actually investigating even a broader range of technologies than some other regions. Let me point out that you can find a lot more details about this in our deliverable D1.2 or the publication that we had during last year's AUCNC. You can find it on IEEE. As mentioned, there was from the global perspective and the priorities, and what we did is we used the information we had from the SNSJU projects regarding the technologies being targeted within each project or the KPIs that are being targeted, and how do we compare to the global vision. This is also an excellent example of the collaboration we had with the other CSA project, so the SNS Ops, the operational CSA, which was responsible for gathering this information, creating these insights. And we managed to take that information and compare it with our own research to see where we stand. So we performed this gap analysis, and we noticed that there were no major research gaps within the SNSJU. The majority of projects within the SNSJU are working on enablers such as AI, ML, and system architecture and control. And then, of course, energy efficiency is very important within the SNSJU, followed by URLC KPIs. That's in terms of KPIs, the lower graph that you see here. So this type of comparison we did once in the beginning, and then we did it again towards the end of the year. Since in the last 2.5 years, a lot of developments took place. All the global regions published new 6G white papers and vision papers, realigned the visions compared to the requirements published by ITU. So we needed to make sure that it was still on track that we know what the other areas are doing and how do we compare with that. So again, we had a major survey across the major regions of the world, which indicated that once again, with regards to key drivers, features, and technologies, we are very well aligned. There's actually huge alignment among the different regions on the major, let's say, pillars that will build 6G networks. And in terms of 6G use cases, again, there are a few that seem to get most of the attention, but the various environmental and social factors do play a role, and we do see some differentiation there when we leave, let's say, the top 5 of the use cases that everybody seems to be agreeing on. So once again, the EU and SNS region targets and research efforts are still well aligned with the global initiatives without any significant gaps. Beyond that, finally, what I wanted to show that we went even a little bit deeper. I am, of course, not going to go deep into this relatively complex table. I just wanted you to know that if you go to our most recent deliverable, T123 on our webpage, you will see this categorization per region and per key theme. So we also wanted to know what are the exact aspects of each of these themes and technologies that each of the regions are looking at and focusing on. So you will see that there is a detailed table there, which shows where each of the region focuses. And that also helps us in organizing our next events or trying to figure out some more synergies with specific areas and regions that are interested in the same aspects of 6G networks as we are here in Europe. So that was it from my side. Hopefully you can appreciate the amount of research and engagement that this information took, and we're really hoping that it was fruitful for the SNSJU community. With that, I'm gonna give the floor to my colleague Jose Almodovar Chico to present to us the activities of the project with regards to standardization. So Jose, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Costas, and thanks for. And it's a pleasure for me to be here. Like Costa said, today I have the pleasure to present all the activities and actions that SNS ICE did in order to support the SNS projects towards the standardization landscape. Costas, can we go to the next slide, please? Great. So something that most of us, if not all of us, are aware is that standardization or 6G standardization has already started, especially in 3EPP. It started already last year with the SA1 workshop, stage 1 workshop, and right now it has started with all the architectural work in groups like SA2 or the run groups. But even before the standardization of 6G started, SNS ICE was already working in different actions to support the impact of the project with analysis of the landscape of the ITU timelines and the WRC, with analysis of standardization and also update on these activities towards the projects, on supporting the 6GIA pre-standardization working group during the duration of the project, and of Costas already mentioned the great collaborations between SNS Ops and SNS ICE. Another one to be mentioned would be the standard tracker, which was developed by SNS Op, but SNS ICE was assisting with all the population with the data. But today I would like to just really fast, as we don't have a lot of time, but put some focus on 2 activities. If we go to the next slide, you will be able, just for your information, to see the planning of 6G according to 3EPP. So you see us there that there are some groups like the SA1 group focus on use cases, or the RAM plenary study, which they have already started. And now the beginning of the discussion on other groups like the architecture group and others has started also. So we will see in the following months a lot of opportunities for SNS projects to bring their contributions to 3EPP and get them possibly agree and create impact with the results of the projects. If we go to the next slide, Costas. Thank you. I would like to draw your attention. Colin already mentioned it, but I think this is worth it to mention again, as it was one of the biggest impact I can say at European level that we have get in standardization. For the first time last year in Rotterdam, the stage 1 SA1 group that I lead, SA1 within 3PP, organized a workshop in use cases to get especially all the ideas, all the work, all the insights of the work done in 6G worldwide by the different regional and global organizations. And of course, for Europe, 6G SNS was invited, and thanks to the work of people like Costas, Colin, Tom Norb, and other people from SNS ICE, there was one and only one vision from Europe presented to this workshop, which I think it was a first great step toward having more unique answers sometimes when are needed at European level. Costas, if we go to the next slide, you will see a bit more in detail what Colin was suggesting or was already presenting before. This work was done not only on the input of European projects like HEXA, 6GNT, FIDAL, and others, but also taking into account the input from the different national initiatives, like, for example, well, all of them were invited, but some of them were really active, like the German, the Dutch, the Italian, and the Finnish ones, which created additional impact or additional complexity to the process, I would say, but it made for sure the impact much more bigger within 3PP. In the next slide, you will have already the use cases families presented. This is some of them, or I think I would like to say most of them, which has also been presented on the slides from Elizabeth, are already part of the 6G study today of the TR22 280. So I think we can show there the impact of the presentation and the success of having a unique voice, in this case from Europe, as most of our use cases, if not all, has been already part of 3PP. They will be considered for when the normative work will start. And if we go to the next slide, Costas, I hope I'm being brief enough. The other activity that we did already last month was to create a webinar focused on 3PP standards and the SNS GU impact. What we aim was not only, or was not to make a webinar where we will explain again all the standardization process, all 3PP, and how things work, but we wanted really for the attendees to really hear from the people having or working in 3PP, from the people working on the European projects, about their experiences, about the best practices, and get from them some insights on how to be more impactful when it's about the standardization on SNS projects. That's why we got people like Miko Usitalo, which is the project leader of the HexaX2, the flagship 6G project, presenting the model of standardization that they follow in the project, together with SA1 delegates from Ericsson and SA2 delegates from Nokia, who also have, in their experience, worked with contributions coming from European projects, having to defend them and have them agree in 3PP, and giving many details and lesson learned to the people attending the webinar. And of course, like all the SNS webinars, this was recorded and it's already available in the website. That's all from me. Once more, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to be here, and back to you, Costas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose, for all the work and guidance, as it was really valuable to have the SA1 chairman as part of our project. With that said, I will give the floor to my colleague Prachi Shaktiva to take us through the activities of the project with regards to the European collaboration and national initiatives. So, Prachi, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Costas. Is everybody able to see my screen and the presenter mode?
We can see it, but not in presenter's mode.
And now?
Still the same as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, let me give me a second. But I can reshare it. Sorry, I'm not able to put this in the presenters mode for some reason. Give me a second. Yes, did that
Yes,
work?
now it's in presenters mode. Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry for the delay, and thank you to everyone who's attending this this webinar today. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase all the work that we've done over the last 2 years. See. Yeah, so I believe that this is something that has already been highlighted by Colin and by Erzsébet, but when we started the SNS ICE project, we noticed that next to the funding that's been dedicated by the SNSJU for all the research in Europe, we saw that the national initiatives, or more like the research programs within the member states, were also allocating a very large chunk of funding towards this effort. So it seemed logical for us to try to align those efforts with that which were happening centrally in Europe to gain maximum advantage out of that, and to also really have one 6G voice here, and to not let the ecosystem get fragmented. So when we started out, we decided to look at the large national initiatives, where we said that what for us means large is initiatives that have a funding of greater than 100 million euros. And in this case, we looked first only at public funding. So we were not looking at the private funding that was being matched by, let's say, the private sector or other organizations. So we really only looked at the funding that was allocated at that time by the governments or the public parties there. We started with this initiative. We started with this overview where we had 7 initiatives, 2 from Finland, Italy, Germany, France, the Netherlands, etc. And then later we added 2 more. We looked into Ireland and Sweden as well. This information was collected through structured interviews. We set up a questionnaire and we asked everyone the same question so as to make the data and to make the information that we put forward comparable to each other. Further, we also distributed this overview to the state representative group, and a paper was also published on this, which was presented at the EU CNC last year. You can find that also online. Moving forward, one of the other things is that once we identified the initiatives and we reported on them, the next important thing to do was to understand the kind of work that they do within the initiatives to be able to see where there are opportunities for collaboration. This was a sort of a metric that we designed ourselves, where we asked the initiatives to assign a star rating to the work that they're doing in a specific category. So for example, if we talk about 5G evolution R&I, if you are not doing any work in it, you put a dash. If you're doing something in it, it's a 1 star. If there's a sizable amount of work, then that's 2 stars. And for a main focus area, we asked the initiatives to assign 3 stars. This helped us to understand where is the bulk of the funding going and where is the bulk of the focus for the national initiatives. And then when we compare this with the work program of the SNSJU, we're able to clearly see where we can reinforce with funding in the future. This actually came in very handy to organize a lot of collaboration further on at workshops. Speaking of workshops, most conferences that we attended last year were also attended by members of the national initiatives and EU collaboration parties. And we thought it would be a great idea to then get together and brainstorm. So at the EU CNC and 6G Summit, both in 2023 and 2024, as well as at Tectotori, we organized workshops, which were often a combination of a few presentations, plus a panel discussion, or a combination of presentations plus a brainstorm session, where we really put people to work. So what you see in the picture at the bottom on the right is that people were asked to brainstorm in groups. And then we really wrote down the ideas that came out of it, because we wanted to see what is it that they identify as possible ways in which we can collaborate. And then we wanted to set really actionable items for us where we can enforce that collaboration. Moving forward, we also supported the state representative group. And this was also done well, first, of course, through reports and information. But in this specific case, it was done through events organized at the EUCNC. So we organized a brainstorming session in 2023 where we really worked with all the SRG members in identifying the goals that they feel can be achieved through European collaboration. And then we looked into the possible ways to achieve those identified goals and how they think that's possible. This also led to some recommendations from the SNS ICE project towards the SRG. And we also took some actions on to further collaboration. Similarly, at the EUCNC in 2024, we had another workshop style thing which focused more on standardization. So here you see Colin presenting on the use cases they spoke about from Europe. That was followed by a panel with standardization experts and industry leaders. Now, I mentioned that we met at these events and that we organized these workshops, but the underlying theme that kind of came out of this was the number of meetings possible by meeting at such conferences is just not enough, because we meet once in 6 months and collaboration requires a closer coordination. So to this effort, we've started organizing collaboration meetings with national initiatives. On the right-hand side, you can see the initiatives that are currently participating in these meetings. These are every 6 weeks. They're held online, and we started these in September 2024. The idea of those meetings is to really give floor to the national initiatives to talk about the work that they're doing within their programs. What are the topics of common interest between everyone? And what are the specific ways in which the national initiatives themselves are seeking collaboration? So it's really giving them a voice, and SNS ICE is facilitating this action. Next to that, there's a series of webinars which are also being organized to allow the national initiatives to showcase their achievements and their experimentation platforms. This series has been continuing since January and will be continuing in the next few months. Please feel free to sign up on the SNSJU events calendar website and be present at these webinars for more detailed information in each initiative. Other than the national initiatives, we have a strong collaboration with other EU initiatives as well. So here you see, for example, we have the CHIPS JU. So the SNS established a close collaboration with the CHIPS JU, and they basically plan for coordinated actions in their specific work programs, so on both sides. For Photonics Europe, there was an exchange of information, and the 6GIA also provided input to the Photonics SRIA. For Euro HPC as well, we have the 6GIA participating in their workshops to present the SNSJU priorities and then find opportunities for collaboration. So similarly, with all these initiatives, there's been an effort done to collaborate closer and find synergies. Lastly, before I close, a couple of conclusions and topics that emerged. So when we started this exercise, we noticed that the roadmaps of the national initiatives and the SNSJU are actually pretty well aligned, which also indicated that there are possibilities for collaboration. So it should be possible for us to find synergies. One of the important topics that emerged here is the cloudification of the telco network, so the disaggregated 6G cloud, which is what my colleague will be talking about right after my presentation. Then within the national initiatives and the SNSJU, we found that the common prioritized topics were 6G network architecture, ubiquitous computing, and radio technology research. But at the same time, there were, from the workshops, we figured out that there are recommendations for the SNS work program in 2026, which can help to increase the synergies between the national initiatives and SNS. And this could, for example, be creating opportunities on security by design, spectrum network sharing, intelligent agents, and services. And lastly, we will be continuing the work that we've done so far in our next project, which is the SNS Co-op, and we'll try to establish closer coordination with more EU and national initiatives. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Prachi. And I think we can give the floor now to Maria Raftopoulou to talk to us a little bit about the EU cloud landscape. In between, let me clarify, because there are some comments in the chat regarding some of the numbers you saw and some of the initiatives that people have different numbers. That indeed, first of all, we definitely didn't include all the initiatives. We had to start somewhere. and the work will continue in the follow-up CSA to identify even more. And regarding the numbers, yeah, as Prati mentioned, those were numbers coming directly from people, maybe specifically targeting sub-programs for 6G, but Prati, I will also let you maybe during the Q&A a bit more light.
So just a quick clarification on that is that the numbers that we showed in that chart were only the numbers on public funding. So that was not the total budget. So if you see a smaller number than what you think is applicable for the national initiative, that's logical because we did not count the other matched fundings there. And secondly, that's a snapshot which is sort of frozen in time in, let's say, September 2023, which is when we conducted the interview. So any changes that occurred after that were not, let's say it was not revised with those figures, but we can make an effort to do that in the next round.
Thank you so much, Prati. Maria, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Kostas. So hello from me as well. So I'm happy to present the work that we did within SNS ICE on the EU cloud landscape. So I will start the presentation and then I will hand over to Alexandros Kaloxilos, 6G IA Executive Director. So if we move to the next slide. So first, why is cloud important for 6G? So within 6G, it is envisioned that we will combine both connectivity as well as computing capabilities. So as you see in the figure, we could have applications that will be running in the cloud quite far away from the users, but also have applications that we will be hosted and deployed closer to the user, and that would be on the edge. Therefore, edge and cloud are becoming critical components for 6G. And currently, the market on cloud services is pretty much dominated by hyperscalers, which are based in the USA. Whereas in Europe, we are lagging a little bit behind when it comes to cloud and edge computing. Therefore, it is important to ensure the European sovereignty when it comes to telco cloud and address all the relevant challenges around that. So starting from the white paper that the European Commission has published on how to master Europe's digital infrastructure, it addresses this topic of 3C networks, which are strive to be the European telco edge cloud. And this importance of the telco cloud has also been addressed and supported by, for example, GSMA, 6GIA, a number of European operators and telco vendors. So in the next slide, we showed the three roles of cloud for 6G that we have identified. The first role of cloud, and it's basically the main role of cloud that we see at 6G, would be to support the 6G core and radio functions, which will be softwareized and deployed in both cloud and edge. As a secondary role, we see cloud for supporting third-party applications. So those applications could be deployed on the edge. This way, the user will experience lower latency, for example. And the third role that we have identified is to support intelligent agents, which are basically applications that could run on the device itself, but could also be offloaded to the network. So having in mind the importance of cloud and the roles that it plays in 6G, we have performed an analysis. If you move to the next slide, we wanted to map what type of cloud-related research is being performed currently in Europe. So we have looked into a number of cloud-related activities. Specifically, we've looked into the activities shown in the slide. Just to mention a few, for example, IPSICE is an important one. There are 12 EU member states contributing to that, and there are 120 ongoing projects. Another important one is the European Alliance for Industrial Data, Edge and Cloud, which has also published 2 months ago this telco cloud reference architecture. But we have also looked into other types of activities like Anuket and Silva, which are open source projects within the Linux Foundation, etc. So for each one of these activities, we perform a literature review. So that was by reading the information they provide on their websites or different publications and documents and deliverables. And we provided an overview of some general information on what type of topics they are addressing and how they're being organized. And we have a quite detailed overview in our deliverable 2.2. And as a summary of that analysis, we created a paper which we submitted to EU CNC and has been accepted and will be presented at EU CNC in 2 months from now. And the next slide, we showed the results of this analysis. Essentially, we have identified some basic topics related to cloud. That's the first column, and then we have the other types of activities that we've looked into. And we basically did a mapping to show which activities are addressing which topics. Again, using a star system, basically, the more stars, it means the activity is putting more focus on that particular topic. So some highlights from this analysis is that there is a general drive for developing open source solutions and on standardizing the developed solutions, either via developing dedicated specifications at each activity, or by contributing to different standardization bodies. Moreover, we have seen that some activities are really focused on supporting 6G functions, whereas other activities are more focused on supporting third-party applications. And moreover, we'll see that there's a general high interest when it comes to security aspects. So that is from my side. So now I will hand over to Alexandros to continue.
Thank you very much, Maria. If we can go to the next slide. So Maria has very nicely presented to all of you the various bits and pieces of R&D activities happening in Europe and of the effort spent by the SNS ICE project to analyze and come up to some recommendations. At the same time, I have to say the following, that activities for the telco cloud are quite important for Europe for very obvious and real reasons. It's not a secret that in Europe we are lagging behind in this kind of solution, and we need to find ways to ensure that the technological sovereignty for Europe is going to be safeguarded. As part of the activities happening in Europe, I can tell you that as part of the private side from the CG Industry Association, the telco cloud facilities have been identified as a key strategic area, and we have provided a white paper with clear recommendations. And last year we had a workshop that identified what is done, what is missing, and what can be planned for the next years. It was extremely useful having all the experts from key stakeholders, from the vendors or the operators, or from representatives from the research community, or even SMEs. We had the opportunity to create links and reach out to IPSE CIS. As Maria said, it's a huge effort with more than 100 projects currently active. Notably, several of these are based on open source solution, which is rather important. We managed to have a very good link with the European Alliance for Industrial Data, Edge and Cloud, and have meeting with all of them. And part of the findings have been used to be discussed under the strategic working group that has been set up by the SNS JU on 3CN, this cooperative connected and computing networks. So this findings are going to be further analyzed. If we can go to the next slide, simply to say that in the meeting that we had last year, the table that I have included here, which I'm not going to read, of course, is simply to identify that we did analyze what is happening in other cloud projects in Cluster 4. We did analyze what is happening in the SNSJU in terms of telco cloud. And we also tried to come up and check and identify if there is something missing. And indeed, there are several things still missing for the telco cloud. So we came up with a plan about the short, medium term activities and potential synergies with other JUs, both on the provision of solutions for the telco cloud as well as the service provision, because it's not only about the cloudification of the network, it's also how the services operating on the cloud are going to interoperate with these telco cloud facilities. As I said, we have identified a lot of projects that are working, even from the SNSJU, but still we need to keep on working on telco cloud solutions to achieve this telco cloud continuum. And we need to mobilize the European stakeholders towards this direction. Specifically, it's going to be an advantage of Europe if we follow open source solutions, because this will help us catch up versus other regions and at the same time have some reference implementations. The development of open interfaces is of paramount importance if we want to enable an environment where the telco cloud is going to be interoperable and multi-provided. And finally, it's part of the solutions definitely need to focus on European values and legislation for data security and privacy. Maria has already presented several solutions and several initiatives and instruments working on telco cloud. We consider that it is of paramount importance to identify ways to converge all these different activities in solutions that are going to be of high TRL so that they are going to be used by the operational networks in the real market, and ensure at the same time that we're going to have experimental infrastructure for telco cloud to further develop these solutions in the context of 6G networks and ensure that our community will be able to develop new solutions, test and experiment, and always stay at the state of the art. And with that, I have covered my part, Costa, and that's it. So, floor is back to you.
Thanks very much to the entire team. Indeed, as you can see, this is SNS ICE has followed a multifaceted approach where various different people from various different organizations have engaged with their respective networks to manage to get the overall view. With that, I will quickly move on to, let's say, the last pillar of the project, which is the vertical landscape and the engagement with vertical stakeholders and the vertical engagement tracker. I will ask our colleague Maria Giuffrida to share the slides, and then Raffaele De Pepe, who's the vice chairman of the CGIA and leading the activities with regards to verticals from SNS ICE side, to take the floor and present. Please, Raffaele.
Okay. Thank you, Kostas, for this introduction. Maybe we can go to the slides already. Okay, verticals. Why verticals are important? Verticals are important because adoption of mobile technologies by vertical industries create a huge economic impact and benefit for European economy. In 2023, the GSMA calculated that the mobile technologies created an impact of 1 trillion euros, which was almost 6% of European GDP. 700 million, which is more than 65%, comes from productivity enhancements of vertical industries. If we consider only 5G has created a benefit of more than 100 billion euros in 2025 and will be more than 160 in 2030. of course, I think that sometimes we underestimate what is the importance of mobile technologies, but mobile industry has the most capillary digital infrastructure at the worldwide level. So this is why we create such a huge economic benefit. Next slide. Considering vertical engagement activities, this has been performed not only under SNS ICE, but this is our board-driven activities in 6GIA through our vertical engagement task force, which I lead. So the main activities of this task force are partnership with industrial associations through MOUs or letter of intention, vertical events participation with qualified speaker, mapping of vertical related projects through the vertical tracker, and orchestrate white papers and brochures. So last year we participated to 7 vertical events. We have a new partnership in the railway sector, so through an MOU. We have this new vertical engagement tracker, which is a web-based tool, which is very important. And we have produced a new white paper for the agriculture sector, and we will have a new plant white paper in the energy sector. So next slide. So this is the map, the full portfolio of MOUs with vertical industries. This portfolio has been created in the last 7 years within the 6GIA. So we have a partnership with the European Space Agency for the satellite part. We have an MOU with in the public security space with the Public Safety Communication Europe. We have a partnership with the automotive industry with the 5GAA in the transportation sector through Ertico. We have a partnership, 2 partnerships in a media side with ABU, especially with the 5G media action plan, and with NEM. We have a partnership with a smart manufacturing sector through the 5G ACAA. We have collaboration, of course, in different domains with IoT, and now we have this new, brand new MOU with the European railway infrastructure managers in the railway sector. So next slide. Okay, one of the most important things we did was this analysis of vertical trends. As you all know, 6G will be active from 2030, maybe a little bit before. So it was important to cross 6G roadmap with other vertical industries roadmap. And the most serious way to do that, since we don't have, of course, a crystal ball, was to assess trends ongoing in those industries. So we produced a white paper, our deliverables with all those technologies changes, challenges, and key trends and future use cases in other industries. So we did this in collaboration with our MOUs partners. So this is not something we wrote by ourselves, but we asked the collaboration of our partners. So this is why MOUs actually are important to sign and maintain and implement. Next slide. Okay, and this is the part relative to vertical survey. So we thought it was important to ask to our community what was the experience of the 5G adoption so far and what is expected more from 5G from now to 2030 when 6G will come, and what were the expectations for 6G. So here we have a lot of a bunch of takeaways. Not sure if we have the time to do it now, but we have produced our deliverables on that. And of course, this was our first attempt to do such an exercise. The survey was quite reused with 18 stakeholders who responded, but still the figures, I think, are a good proxy of what are the expectation, the lesson learned with 5G and the expectation for 6G. Of course, the adoption of 5G was very good, and of course we expect even more from 5G on 6G through simplicity and maintainability. So this was a good lesson learned that sometimes 5G was not easy to implement. It was not easy to implement feature like the 5G slicing for instance, so the community expects more simplicity and maintainability. 5G has been widely adopted, cross-adopted in all different domains, but of course we expect more global coverage, since also Jose explained before, still mobile technologies coverage is not as far as we expected. Of course, here integration with satellite will be absolutely key to reach 100% coverage. There was a good feedback on low latency solutions, but now from 6G we expect very low latency solutions. Since we have new use cases on that, we have a smart integration with of course, satellites technologies. Sorry, and on 6G we expect even more with AI and integrating sensing and communication. Regarding integration of sensing capabilities, I think this will be absolutely key because, as I said before, mobile technologies are the most impressive and capillary digital infrastructure that we have, and the fact that this infrastructure will be not only able to communicate but also to sense the environment will be something very new and very important. Not sure if you had the news, read the news some days ago, in which I don't want to make any commercial, but a big worldwide operator made a first service in fine-tuning weather prediction in UK. So this is kind of things that 6G will be able to do. So enhance weather measurements, do measurements of the traffic or the public health, and so on. And so this will be, I guess, will have a huge socio-economic impact if we will be aware that we have in our hands a very, very powerful technology. Next slide. Okay, this is still in a story of the 5G adoption and the 6G expectation. As we saw before, the economic contribution of mobile technologies and 5G has been huge. What we must be careful in 6G is that 6G must be economically sustainable. As you may know, especially in Europe, the ARPU, the average revenue per user for a mobile operator, is less and less, and so will not be any more able to guarantee enough returns on investment to invest on future technologies. So here the ball is also in a field of our policymakers, and we must be sure that whatever policy measures we adopt, like the digital network act that will be activated by the end of the year, will allow mobile operators still to invest in 6G technologies in 2030. So I think this is all on my side. You can use the chat for further questions and write to me, and that will be a pleasure to give you responses as far as I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raffaele. Very interesting service indeed with our contacts with the verticals. And now the floor to Maria Giuffrida from Trust IT to take us through what I consider one of the crowning achievements of the project, the Vertical Engagement Tracker, which is a very handy tool for both the SNS community, but also broader audience. So Maria, please, the floor is to you.
Yes, thank you, Costas and Raffaele. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can still see my screen. Since we are a little bit late, I decided to skip the slides, which however are available for you after the meeting. These are just introductory slides of the Vertical Engagement Tracker, and proceed directly with, let's say, a virtual tour, an overview of this tool, which is one of the key exploitable results of the SNS ICE project. So this is an online repository, let's say, which contains two main types of information. You can see them in the beginning, in the home page. So the vertical cartography, which is a collection of the use cases being developed by the SNSJU Research and Innovation Actions, and the vertical associations, which is a list of the main industry associations that are connected with the use cases and the domains of the use cases mapped in the vertical cartography. We can navigate any of these two, let's say, windows because they are also connected, but let's start with the vertical cartography part. You will find, let's say, first a description and introduction of the vertical cartography. You have on the left-hand side a series of filters by which you can decide to select which type of information you want to see. For instance, you can select by the name of the project, by SNSJU call. At the moment, we have 59 projects mapped on the cartography, which belong to either call 1 or 2, but we also have those that we call project open call third-party funding, which are not directly the SNSJU projects, but let's say external initiatives and projects that are funded by the SNSJU projects via a cascade funding mechanism. We have 82 projects under this category. Then you can navigate by vertical sector. We have 11 main industrial segments and other use cases which are more general and cross-sectoral. The countries, the type of experiment which go from the simulation to the more advanced trials, and then the technical functionality of the use case. One interesting feature is you can have very nice automated charts overview, let's say, of the combined data that is behind the tracker. So if you go on these charts, you will see 3 sections of charts. One are the overview charts, where you can see different type of, let's say, statistics from the number of use cases by project and by call, or the industry and the number of use cases by industry also divided by call. And this is a dynamic, dashboard, meaning that you can decide to also apply filters here. For instance, you can decide to look only at projects from open call 2. You have also the graph related to the use cases type and also the locations. Then the second section of the let's say, automated chart regards the third-party use cases. So you have similar information, but those that were funded by the SNSJU projects. And last but not least, this is a vertical engagement tracker. So we have a set of charts dedicated to specific verticals, which means that you can view, let's say, the same data as before, but filter by sector. And also in this case, the navigation is dynamic because you can decide, for instance, if you want to see use case types for the automotive sector, you stay here. If you want to watch it for smart city, you just change it, and the numbers are updated. Beyond the overview graphics, another interesting element that you can navigate in the vertical tracker is the detailed description of the use case. So you have the 283 projects I was use cases I was mentioning. So let's assume we are interested in this one. We click on it. We have a dedicated web page for it, where you can see a description of the use case, some other information like the type of experiment, the functionality, the location, which are the filters I was showing you before, the vertical sector where this use case belong. And then you have also the information about the project that is developing this. You can go and click to discover more about the project. This will bring you to the website of the project itself. And then you can see also the connection with the vertical association part of the tracker. So you can see the associations that are linked to this use case. For instance, let's go to IoTI, which is IoT-focused association active in various sectors. And so you go here and know more about this association in case you want to connect with it. And you can navigate also this other part by reading all the use cases that are in the tracker connected with this association. Here you can scroll and see all the use cases, and from here, for instance, go back to another use case, a specific use case. So these are the, let's say, relevant element of the vertical engagement tracker. Just to tell you that this is only one of the trackers that are available under the SNSJU portal. We have 2 others that were developed by other CSAs, and all of these trackers will be also continued to be improved and updated in the follow-up CSA, which is currently ongoing SNSCOP. Thank you very much for your attention, and I leave the floor back to Kostas.
Thank you so much, Maria and Rafael. Quick and efficient overview. We're quickly running out of time, so I will ask my colleague Carles Anton Haro of CTC to take the floor to present some key recommendations. So from all of our interactions with all the different stakeholders, we managed to boil them down to a few key recommendations from our side to different stakeholders. And I believe Carles is with us despite of the challenges with electricity in Spain today. So please, Carles, take the floor. And let me say, based on what a question I see on the chat, that as mentioned at the beginning, all slides will become available from the event page, including the recording of today's event. So, Carles, please, the floor is yours. I can see your slides, but I cannot hear you, Carles. I'm not sure. Microphone issue.
Hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Okay.
It's kind of challenging today. I mean, with the blackout, as you might have heard, I didn't know even if I could present the slides, but finally it seems to be the case. All right, so let's go ahead with this. So this final presentation, as you can see from the title, it's about the strategic recommendations elaborated by the SNS ICE project in the course of the execution of the project and stemming from the interaction with various players in these last 2 years and something. And those recommendations, which are, in order to reach global consensus and also to ease the cooperation in R&D towards 6G, are tailored to each stakeholder type, be it, say, public side, large industry, academia, or verticals, as you'll see in a few minutes. All right, so where are those recommendations properly reflected? If you want to know more, they are shown or explained in these 3 policy briefs that the SNS ICE project has elaborated on recommendations for the vertical sectors, recommendations towards a single global 6G standard, and the other one about synergies for European and national initiatives work at the European level, and also this other project, this other paper that will be presented soon at UCNC this year in Poznan. So here's all the information. You can download the files from the SNS ICE project, or you can also get it from the proceedings in a few months from now. So now, starting with some recommendations for policymakers, the SNS office, and the public sector in general, you can see some of them there. First, of course, investment is important in strategic initiatives. As my colleague said, cloud at the European level is a quite strategic matter. Also, so is data sovereignty and digital inclusion. So in order to reduce the dependency of non-European cloud providers, and also in order to expand connectivity to underserved regions. That would be the main targets for the investment. Also, entrusting the 6GIA with a leading and orchestration role in telco cloud initiative. This is well in line with some communications of the European Commission in order to maximize the resource utilization and sustain long-term initiative in Cluster 4 at IPSAI, CIS, and also the SNS World Program. That would be the second recommendation. Third, of course, global standards require some global work, and Europe priorities need to be represented there, notably at the 3GPP and ITI, because this will be critical in order to shape, say, the future standards and also governing spectrum allocation, cybersecurity, and things like that. About the funding mechanism, the recommendation here is to expand them, as it's been the case already in Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, on the various JUs and PPPs, that is very much needed in order to sustain long-term collaborative research initiatives. Next is, all right, partnerships are also needed at the international level. You need to force those partnerships because digital sovereignty, technological sovereignty is fine, but so is collaboration with other sites and regions of the planet in order, for instance, to facilitate joint R&D programs, also cross-border technology trials. Well, we need commitments also from other sites and regions of the world. And to do that, you need to forge those strategic partnerships at the public level. Now, current programs like SNSJU and also the national initiatives have some measures to facilitate access of SMEs to the necessary resources for them to develop their projects. That is also that should continue to happen in FP10. That would be nice to have in order to let them commercialize their invention, the SMEs. This along with other initiatives, launching other initiatives or additional initiatives towards mentorship and incubation activities for those startups to find their role in shaping the future of 6G. Finally, in this slide, it's also proposed to let the SNSJU to have a leading role in what concerns what we call a 6G coordination hub, to facilitate the exchange of information between the various national initiatives that my colleagues described, in the hope that those national initiatives help complement European level ones. If we move to the telecom industry, large players, vendors, and also large operators, we feel that it is critical to accelerate the transition to open and interoperable 6G networks in order to make the deployment and the running of the networks more flexible and cost-effective and avoiding vendor lock-in. In doing so, it's critical to run testbeds and pilots, validating the feasibility of those open networks. Investing in transformative technologies, you can see the list there, AI native networks, terahertz, they are well described in the 6GIA white paper that has also a strong contribution of the SNS ICE project. Third one would be to continue to develop cloud native and software-defined networking solutions in such a way that Europe continues to be at the forefront of the development of next generation services, as it's already been the case today, but has its continuation into 6G. Strengthening the collaboration of a European initiative with national ones, it sounds to be particularly important or critical in what concerns open source and the development of standardization activities too. And when you have a message, you have to convey it. So it's also good, a recommendation to the telecom industry to publish and disseminate position papers where the European 6G vision is articulated, and disseminate them either, say, in international forums to build consensus, in order also in via digital platforms. All right, what about research and academia? You have a number of recommendations there. Most of them are interrelated. This is what the arrows attempt to reflect. First one, well, let's make sure that there is a tight collaboration between research institutions and also the other players, industry players, regulatory bodies, etc., in order to turn academic research into market-ready innovations. That would be a critical thing to do to achieve. Also, align research activities in academia and research centers with the global priorities. 6G is a global standard, so we need some alignment there. Instrumental to this is playing a key role in experimental validation. There are lots of, say, experimental assets in many labs and academia all over Europe, also thanks to the recovery funds and some national initiatives. So it would be good to use them for experimental and trials and pilots, for instance, in the context of STREAM-D activities before large-scale and commercial validation. Also, what about having industry and academia testbeds, both at the European and the national initiative level, in order to accelerate 6G innovation and commercialization? This is one more recommendation. And also, when it comes to policy discussions, well, academia is also welcome. It can be critical in what concerns balancing innovation with ethical considerations, data protection, cybersecurity standards, among others. So research and academia welcome also in this area. Now, concerning SMEs and startups, the recommendations here for SMEs and startups is to focus on niche innovations that is more sizable for them, and also to participate in open source and collaborative projects, like various open running initiatives, or the collaborative projects of the SNSJU, where they already have a good place and good role to play. About all stakeholders, so all the stakeholders I've mentioned so far, the recommendations would be mainly two. First, foster or continue to foster public-private partnerships like the SNSAU or the various working groups in such a way that we can ensure a seamless integration of the efforts being conducted by those stakeholders. And also standardization efforts, as we already mentioned, they are critical, but perhaps it would be good to streamline European contributions in order to ensure an impactful representation of 6G priorities in upcoming standards. Streamline. And finally, very quickly, since actually we already ran out of time, just let me briefly outline some recommendations to and from vertical sectors stemming from the interaction of Raffaele and other 6GIA board members and SNS ICE players with vertical sectors, again, targeted to them in the health. Clearly, regulatory frameworks matter a lot. This is critical because of the to maintain interoperability among different healthcare systems and devices, making sure that disparities between, for instance, rural and urban areas are to some extent, say, balanced or compensated, because health is say something that everyone should have access to, and also prioritize internal collaborations and harmonization, because health, after all, it's a global matter. When it comes to public safety, network infrastructure matters a lot. We need advanced network infrastructure, which is resilient and reliable, promote interoperability of the various security agencies and also the various standards that are incorporated into the communication systems of those agencies, and making sure that it is possible to have real-time emergency coordination. This meaning demanding services like reduced latency and large bandwidth one for video transmission, for instance. In the car, in the automotive sector, some spectrum is needed in order to make connected vehicle communications something feasible in both in the low and the mid band. There are some estimates there in the papers, the position papers I mentioned, and making sure that everything is covered in order to make this driving safe and ubiquitous, also including cross-regional and trans-country collaborations, like in the case of large-scale pilots, international large-scale pilots. And finally, in the industry 4.0 vertical, industrial automation, there seems to be a need for developing skills. There's some shortage identified in this sector, in particular technology and the incorporation of technology. Some facilitation would be welcome in terms of, for instance, some subsidies or tax reduction that would help companies to incorporate 5G, 6G, or other technologies. In their opinion, in the media vertical sector, data privacy regulation and transparency standards are key, given the increasing reliance on AI content generation. For instance, investment in the rural areas of infrastructure, communication infrastructure is particularly critical in order to be able to provide services like immersive reality or high definition video transmission, in particular in rural areas, as I already said. About railway transportation, which is particularly in line with sustainability goals of the European Commission. Here, digitalization and automation is key in order to make those systems more efficient, more reliable, and also the user experience be better. To do that, you need to invest in rail infrastructure and in also in communication technologies, for instance, to underpin high-speed trains. And finally, when it comes to the agriculture sector, again, rural connectivity is a need, given the large areas to be served. The number of IoT devices, the variety of IoT devices is very high, so interoperability protocols are key here to make sure that they understand each other. And also there's a need for a substantial R&D in topics like ultra-low power communications, because many of those devices are left there unattended for a long time. We don't want to replace the batteries. And also, as I already said, provide ubiquitous coverage in most of the rural areas. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. Happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Carles. And with that, we reach the end of the presentation part of our webinar. Unfortunately, since we have run out of time, as we had a lot of material to share, Many thanks to also our dissemination and communication manager, Pooja Monani from Eurescom, who tried to answer one of the questions on the chat regarding how we measure impact. And let me also clarify that as part of our final deliverable from Work Package 4, we of course keep track of multiple KPIs that try to measure our impact in various ways. And all of that is public information. I don't see any other burning questions in the chat, or at least ones that we haven't been able to address, but maybe I can quickly open the floor and see if there are any burning questions from anyone right now on the bridge. Okay, I guess not. It's also been a long webinar, so we really appreciate all of you being here. Hopefully you now have a better idea of what we've been working on for the past 2.5 years. And we'd like to believe that we leave behind a very nice legacy for the rest of the SNSJU community in terms of knowledge, publications, and tools that will help the researchers further forward the research. Let me thank each and every one of the speakers today for being here, and of course for your hard work over the past 2.5 years. And with that, I think we can close the webinar. The slides and recordings will become available in the event page. And thanks so much, everybody. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.